The Interview by Peter Russell of Northbridge 2063. Narrated by David Tredinnick. My pinstriped suit was starting to look worse for wear. It had been working overtime of late. The blonde receptionist kept staring at it, as if encouraging me to get a makeover. A door opened, and a young man who introduced himself as Jeremy Simpson was suddenly hovering over me. He was pencil-thin, over-groomed, and had a face festooned with acne scars. He ushered me into a government-issue room where I encountered two people behind a government-issue desk, writing furiously. "This is Peter Russell," said Jeremy, nodding in my direction. The female member of the interview panel stopped writing, stared at me momentarily, then smiled beatifically. She was a middle-aged woman with high cheekbones and hazel eyes, smartly dressed and stylishly coiffured. "Jessica Sumner," she said, remaining seated. The man sitting next to her continued writing for several seconds, then, as if stung by a bee, shot to his feet and thrust out a hand. "Bob Carmichael," he declared. His breath smelt like juicy fruit. Carmichael was an older man, short, clean-shaven, and balding. We shook, then he resumed his seat between the other two panellists. "So, why do you want to be a front desk guard when you've spent an entire career working as a senior security manager?" he asked. "I just wanted to return to the workforce," I replied. "I wasn't ready to retire at age 60. Carmichael retrieved what I recognised to be my 2-page resume and started quoting from it. "It says here you decided to leave your last security manager job because your department relocated your position to Canberra." I nodded, expecting him to continue, which he did. "Then why the decision not to transfer to Canberra?" "Family reasons," I replied. "I'm a widower, and I would have missed seeing my 3 children and 7 grandchildren, all of whom live here in Sydney." "So you resigned?" "Just put my career on hold, temporarily. I was confident I'd be able to perform a similar role somewhere else in Sydney. My department head gave me a glowing reference, as you can see." Carmichael shuffled through several pages, then nodded. "And that was, let's see, 2 years ago, sir," I said. "And how many security positions have you applied for in that period?" "By my reckoning, around 40. "Could you talk us through this a little more, please, Peter?" asked Jessica Sumner. I felt myself frowning. This was the first job interview of many I'd had where a selection panel actually wanted to hear about my 2-year humiliation as a professional job applicant. I took a deep breath. "When I resigned 2 years ago, I was drawing a substantial 3-figure salary and occupying a very large office, commanding a budget of around $15 million. I had a staff component around Australia numbering about 60 full-time public servants and consultants, and I was in high demand." Carmichael appeared to be comparing the subtext of my story with the text of my resume, while the other 2 panellists remained seated upright, staring directly at me. "I made the shortlist for the first 10 applications I submitted," I continued. "These were all well-paid security manager positions. However, I made the mistake of including my birth date in the resume I submitted for those jobs, and now I realise I shouldn't have." "And why is that, Peter?" asked Jeremy Simpson. I detected a look of disapproval from his Ms. Sumner. "I can only speculate, Jeremy," I replied. "Ageism is an actionable act of discrimination, and I was in my early 60s at the time, so they had to devise another reason for not employing someone with my outstanding work record." "And what were you told?" the young man persisted. I forced a smile. "Well now, let's see. The popular feedback was that I was overqualified, but there were other reasons given, such as, we had an outstanding list of applications, including those with credentials more relevant than yours, or we decided to employ one of our own departmental candidates, which was government speak for we were only ever going to give the job to an internal candidate anyway." Ms. Sumner started tapping her fingers nervously. I find your judgments here to be somewhat cynical, she scowled. So what about your other 30 or so unsuccessful applications? I was digging a hole for myself, but by this stage it didn't really matter. After my 10th refusal, I started applying for more junior security positions, and that's when I was gleefully told, when I asked for feedback, that I was significantly overqualified. In the end, I gave up asking for feedback, and by the time I was into my 40th job application, I was no longer being contacted by the potential employer in any case. So I have no expectations with this application, ma'am. This time, the chair rose slowly from his seat before turning to his colleagues. I'm suspending this interview, he told them. Peter and I are going to have a brief conversation in the room next door. He opened an adjoining door and ushered me through it, offering me a chair alongside him. Peter, he began, knowing what I know about your professional background, I am simply not prepared to offer you a job as a uniformed guard on our front desk. I would not be able to live with myself when I collected my dog tag from you each morning and handed it back to you each night. I looked at him, not knowing what to say. I have a few contacts in the security game, he continued. So I'm going to contact them and recommend they take you on board in a senior security capacity. Are you comfortable with that? Within weeks, I was back in the game, doing what I should have been doing. Working hard, but more importantly, aging gracefully. Because I had learnt humility the hard way, and never lost hope that someone out there still believed in me. The end.